languages of Germany. One of the oldest ideals in most European countries was, and in some cases still is, one country, one people, one language. Well, add to this one ruler, at least in former times. Transitioning to toleration of ethnic, linguistic, and political diversity has been a long and arduous process. While internal diversity is being tolerated to a certain degree now, diversity introduced from the outside is still being widely opposed, rejected, and combated. As far as language is concerned, non-standard dialects of the language of power have been tolerated as long as their speakers are also proficient in the officially promoted standard dialect. And, most importantly, as long as their speakers are not in any way considered renegades. Lack of proficiency in the standard dialect tends to be considered a sign of insufficient education and sophistication. Even in this day and age, some minority languages in European countries still tend to be referred to as idioms, as slang, or as debased types of languages of backward people. Use of minority languages, namely languages clearly not related to the language of national power, has traditionally been frowned upon. They tend to be perceived as alien, although they have been used within the country for centuries, if not millennia, in some cases longer than the language of power itself has. In many people's minds, minority languages represent an impediment and even a threat to national integrity and unity. Where governments share such sentiments, minority languages tend to be ignored, and their use tends to be discouraged, if not even outlawed. This is particularly so where a minority language is considered regional, where it is the original language of a certain area and represents a separate culture and ethnic identity with or without a separate religion. This may be perceived as tribalist, disloyal, separatist, and secessionist, even where the language minority itself does not harbor such sentiments. Another problematic aspect exists where a minority is, although clearly a separate language, fairly closely related to the national standard language. In such a case, the minority language tends to be viewed as a dialect group belonging to the national language, thus not being entitled to special consideration, protection, and support, and certainly not entitled to any official status. Things began to shift at the end of the 20th century. Recognition and protection began to be discussed in Europe with consideration of language rights as a part of human rights. This culminated in the tabling of the European Languages Charter that called for recognition, protection, and encouragement of minority languages all over Europe. Not all countries signed this charter, and of those that did sign it, not all have ratified it so far. Germany, the most populous European Union country, was one of the first to both sign and ratify the European Languages Charter. Besides German as the national language, Germany recognizes 4 autochthonous minority languages and 1 regional language. The label autochthonous applies to languages that are viewed as indigenous, or at least have been used in the country for centuries. Thus, it excludes as foreign and intrusive all those languages that were introduced by immigrants in more recent times, such as Turkish and Kurdish. Let's now turn to which languages are officially recognized in Germany. German. German is the native language of approximately 95% of German citizens. All German nationals are expected to be conversant in Standard German. German is a West Germanic language. It is traditionally referred to as High German, which assumes that Low German is a German dialect group, although it has a different ancestor. Standard High German is believed to have begun with the Bible translation of Martin Luther, a speaker of East Central Franconian, a German dialect group. A distinguishing feature of German proper is a number of sound shifts that are absent in other Germanic languages, including so-called Low German.
Mitbürgerinnen und Mitbürger. Vor 11 Tagen ist das böse Je in unseren Alltag getreten. Ein fröhlicher Vorweihnachtsabend auf dem Weihnachtsmarkt von Magdeburg verwandelte sich in einen unvorstellbaren Albtraum. 5 Menschen sind auf grausame Weise getötet worden, mehr als 200 wurden verletzt, darunter viele sehr schwer. Meine Gedanken sind seither jeden Tag bei denen, die ihre Liebsten verloren haben oder noch immer um sie bangen. Den Verletzten wünsche ich, dass sie schnell wieder ganz gesund werden, an Körper und Seele. Fassungslos stehen wir vor dieser menschenverachtenden Tat. Wie kann ein wahnsinniger Attentäter nur so viel Leid verursachen? Und nicht nur in Magdeburg fragen sich viele, woher soll die Kraft kommen, um weiterzumachen nach solch einer Katastrophe?
A subcategory of German is German Sign Language, which is closely related to most other European sign languages. Let's now turn to Germany's other officially recognized languages. Danish. Dansk. Danish is spoken by around 50,000 to 60,000 people in Schleswig-Holstein. It's the only one of Germany's official minority languages whose actual base is in another country, namely in neighboring Denmark. It's a recognized minority language in the northernmost state of Schleswig-Holstein, which geographically constitutes the southern end of the Jutland Peninsula. Danish is a North Germanic language of the East Scandinavian branch. Schleswig is the region in which North Germanic and West Germanic languages meet and influence each other. Throughout history, the German-Danish border moved back and forth several times. According to at least the Danes, today's border separates Danish-administered northern Schleswig and German-administered southern Schleswig. Most ethnic Danes of southern Schleswig are German citizens and attend Danish language schools, in which German is mandatory as well. On the other side of the border, most ethnically German Danish citizens speak German and Danish and attend German schools. In earlier times, Schleswig Danes spoke Southern Jutisch, a very distinctive Danish dialect group with strong Low Saxon, Low German, influences. Schleswig Germans used to speak Schleswig Low Saxon, which has been influenced by Danish and Frisian. This diversity has been drastically decreased due to language standardization in German and Danish schools and media. Nevertheless, in terms of so-called autochthonous languages, Schleswig-Holstein is Germany's state with most diversity, what with the use of not only Danish but also of Frisian, Low Saxon, Romani, and German, with a fairly high percentage of multilingualism, especially in the north.
Året gør tidens gang tydelig. Når klokken slår 12, strejfer 2 år hinanden, og afslutning bliver til begyndelse. I aften tager vi afsked med det gamle år og hul på det nye. Helt som vi har gjort det år efter år. Og så alligevel, noget er forandret. For min mor, dronning Margrethe, for mig og for jer.
Frisian, frisk, 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 fresh, frosh, fresh, Freisk. People tend to assume that Frisian is a single language, but actually it is a group of West Germanic languages with between poor and fair mutual intelligibility. The West Frisian language is not used in Germany, but in the Netherlands. North Frisian and Saterland Frisian are used only in Germany and are officially recognized as minority languages under the general label Frisian. All Frisian speakers of Germany are proficient in German, many in Low Saxon as well. In addition, some speakers of North Frisian also have Danish proficiency. North Frisian is used along the North Sea coast of Schleswig-Holstein. It consists of two main groups of language varieties: mainland North Frisian and insular North Frisian. Mainland North Frisian consists of 5 main groups of language varieties, and insular North Frisian consists of 3 groups. Together, all these Frisian varieties are spoken by about 10,000 people.
Det var sånn fulle lys og nys hus. Men talte was ein på større hei og oudere jone en il. Så det kom ans fulle folk og fromme folk tøs en hus. En dat was en jutte bij de steen, det was jo alles nog van de hånd, det kom ook alles wat er beschreef, mijn mam spaalt me, ze spaalt je de rol hold me, en det was een timmy glimt die hus, wat we werden heim.
Eastern Friesland is a region on the North Sea coast of the German state of Lower Saxony. Within this region, the East Frisian language became extinct and replaced with Frisian-influenced Low Saxon a long time ago. A last enclave of the East Frisian language remains outside Eastern Friesland, in Saterland, a region in the Cloppenburg district of Lower Saxony. It's called Saterland Frisian or Sater Frisian and is spoken by about 2,000 descendants of medieval migrants from Eastern Friesland. All speakers of Saterland Frisian are also proficient in German, many of them in Low Saxon as well.
Marianne Vogel und ich wohne hier in Skedel und wir sind an für sich richtige Zelter und darum ballen wir auch mit allem von Zeltersk. Wir beiden mit der Letzte, wir ballen Jochtweg Zeltersk. Und ich war stüttig hier in Reed von der Gemeinde Zelterland und bin darum auch viel rundgekommen hier und habe Massen Leute kennengelernt. Marianne Vogel.
Sorbian, Serbština, Serbsce, Serbski. Sorbian, not to be confused with Serbian, is natively used by approximately 20,000 people in the Lusatia region in far eastern Germany. It's the last remnant of indigenous Slavic within Germany, and it's unique to Germany. Approximately the entire eastern part of what's now Germany used to be dominated by West Slavic cultures and languages. As a result of medieval German colonization and domination, the Slavic population came to be absorbed and Germanized over time. Original Upper Lusatia used to be much more extensive, encompassing much of Lower Silesia, with its capital being the city that on its German side is called Görlitz and on its Polish side Zgorzelec. Lower Lusatia also used to be larger, its capital being Cottbus. The label Sorbian covers 2 closely related languages with separate standard dialects, Upper Sorbian and Lower Sorbian, although fairly closely related to Polish, Silesian, Czech, and Slovak. Together, they constitute a West Slavic language branch of its own. The use of both these languages was outlawed under the Hitler regime at a time when Slavic people were officially considered an inferior race. The fact that millions of Germans are at least partly of Slavic origin is only these days being gradually acknowledged. The Sorbian language now enjoys official minority status in the states of Brandenburg and Saxony. They are being taught in schools, particularly in a few Sorbian schools in which they are co-official with German. Sorbian is influenced by German, many speakers of today having what sounds like a German accent.
Ja przyjdę z Łużycy, a ja jestem od serbskiej mężczyzny, naukodzienimskie, blisko czeskie a polskie. A my bydlimy tam po hižo, no haj, 1500 lat prejmo. A nasza mężczyzna wopstej znika 60 ludzi, ale my wszyscy to rzecz nie znajemy, to jest nam ważne, już kitać. A
Romani, Romanes, Romanicip, Sintikes, Manush. Romani is Germany's only official minority language without a specific region, as it is spoken throughout the country. The earliest known documented presence of Roma travelers, gypsy being a derogatory label, in Germany is from 1417 in the Lower Saxon city of Hildesheim. As in other European countries, the Roma, whose ancestors had left northwestern India, were perpetually treated as unwelcome foreign elements on the fringes of society. Trying to survive in a largely hostile environment, they tend to be somewhat secretive about the language and culture. 15,000 to 25,000 Roma and Sinti were killed in Germany in its annexed region during the Hitler era. An estimated 250,000 and 500,000 throughout Europe. After the Second World War, Germany not only made a semblance of restitution to the survivors, but it also began to make efforts to improve the lives of Roma and Sinti and to affirm them as an indigenous part of the German people. Officially recognizing their language is a part of this effort. Many people, foremost the majority of Sinti, argue that what usually is referred to as Romani consists of two languages, Romani proper and Sinti. The latter is often referred to as Sinti Romani, and many Sinti may not agree with this either, claiming that their ancestors and language migrated from another part of India at a different time in history. Romani, and especially Sinti of Germany, show clear signs of German influence. They remain primarily spoken languages, and their speakers tend to distrust academics and others attempting to study the languages. Roma and Sinti authors tend to publish their works in German rather than in their ancestral languages.
Laccio dives, moschale joviale me hamobizeli, gatti gani pfefferminza, und balmande hinina modat, und jo prakrela gane gon jo pi, und hilui chacho sento.
Nehme Pfefferminze.
Wir haben ein bisschen.
Hä?
Na, na, guck doch, ich doch jeg. Na, wir haben ein bisschen. Und man schaben kann ein bisschen, gar nicht.
Und ha kares Datei und der Dat.
Wir lachen Data. Jo karis Schelle. Und wir lachen Mama, karis Zizit.
Low German, Niederdeutsch, Plattdeutsch, Platt, Plattdeutsch. The label Low German may be argued to be somewhat confusing, if not even misleading. Of all the officially recognized languages of Germany, Low German is the only one labeled regional rather than minority, even though With the exception of Romani and of course German, the other languages are regional as well. The reason may well be that the so-called minority languages of Germany are associated with separate minority ethnicities, while speakers of Low German are considered ethnically German. This is also why the ancestral Old Saxon language has been renamed Old Low German to integrate it into the overall label German. This effort began a long time ago with the forcible integration of the non-Christian Saxon nation into the Frankish-led Holy Roman Empire, followed by linguistic and cultural Germanization of what is now northern Germany after the decline of the once powerful Hanseatic Trading League. It can be safely stated that most of today's speakers of the so-called Low German do see themselves as ethnically German and therefore find it acceptable to consider their language a type of German. In a nutshell, Low German is perceived as different enough from German proper to afford it some type of language status, but the perceived absence of ethnic separation permits it to be labeled as no more than regional. Low German is a catch-all label for more than one language. The majority of language varieties under this label descended from Old Saxon and may be called Low Saxon, which they are in the Netherlands where the language is spoken as well. It would be more accurately called simply Saxon or Modern Saxon, were it not for the fact that Germans have come to associate Saxon with today's actually non-Saxon state of Saxony. The other language varieties covered under the label Low German are Low Franconian ones, spoken along North Germany's western border. On the German side with the borders with the Netherlands and Belgium, these are predominantly Eastern dialects of Clevelandish and Limburgish. To make it even more confusing, in linguistics, the label Low German applies to Dutch and Afrikaans as well. The number of Low German speakers has been estimated anywhere between 1.5 and 5 million, with a rapidly dwindling number of native and truly proficient speakers. On the other hand, as less negativity is now associated with the language and it is increasingly being embraced as an expression of northern pride, more North Germans are now interested in learning and revitalizing it as their heritage language. However, due to the absence of a standard dialect, a standard orthography, adequate teaching resources, and authentic use in the media, the language is being influenced by German at a rapid pace. Nevertheless, there are now growing efforts to revitalize and promote Low Saxon. Its use in the media has been increasing, although there is a scarcity of serious literature and most people still associate it with light entertainment and down-home comedy. The language is now being taught in some schools, beginning with preschool and ending at university levels.
Plattdeutsch, wat is dat? Wat de Lüd in Duitsland Plattdeutsch neumt, dat het meer als een beduden. Erstens, al de Sprachform, die sich platt neumt. Door hört nicht bloß de Sprach von Norden toe, man ook een paar Duitsche Dialekten in Süden. Rheinsche, Döringsche, Alemannsche und noch andere.
Summary. With regard to its language policies, Germany is one of the more progressive European countries in that it both signed and ratified the European Languages Charter and to some degree implemented measures to protect and support language rights. While Germany expects all residents of the country to be proficient in German, the official national language, it also afforded regional minority language status to Danish, Frisian, Sorbian, and Romani based upon separate ethnicity status. It officially recognized Low German as a regional language only, most likely because its speakers are not thought of as ethnically separate from Germans. With the exception of Danish, recognized minority and regional language labels cover more than one language each. Official recognition of any of the many other languages used in Germany, including those used by sizable populations for generations, is not to be expected anytime soon, as they are perceived as foreign. Although many Germans are welcoming of speakers of those languages, there are still considerable xenophobic attitudes in certain sections of the citizenry.